Hello, I'm Kenneth from Upscale Hoarders. Chris and I have decided to open up our garage to see what we have hiding in our warehouses. Today, this is a 2024 Porsche Macan S. My favorite color, red. The actual description is called Carmine Red. To me, it means attractive, fun, and fast. I enjoy Porsche cars because they're a thrill to drive, they're exhilarating, they handle great, they have power. So we're going to give you some details on what it's like to own this 2024 Porsche Macan S. This is our second Macan that we've had. We have our older one, which is a 2017 Porsche Macan GTS. This one is special. Porsche knows how to pass wealth and knowledge from one generation to the next. In terms of engine, this is a 2.9 liter V6 twin turbo engine, which actually came from the previous Macan GTS. And Porsche likes to make improvements over the years. They tweak the power, make it run better, add some torque, and they also share their knowledge with their lower siblings. So it has a much bigger V6 twin turbo engine than even our older first generation GTS. Next, I'm going to pop the hood and we're going to see what's underneath. Oosh. I just drove this in 92-degree hot weather, twin turbo engine, great power, but puts a lot of heat. The hood is a little bit hot to touch right now. I think I'm getting a pair of gloves. Ouch, ouch. Too hot to handle. I'll be right back. The first Macan that came out in 2015, I did test drive it. It seemed like it was a little on the slow side, and it seems like there was some hesitation. And then this is a much better version and a much better engine that's in this car. This is actually the third rendition. The very first series came out in 2015. There was a redesign in 2019. And this one, even though it's a 24, this rendition first came out in 22. They had time to make it much more compliant. So that means smoother, more comfortable, a little bit softer ride. So it's almost like at the end of the spectrum, let's say with Lexus, which is already there with smooth and comfort, and we have Porsche with sporty and fast. In a way, Porsche wants to get a little bit more mainstream, so they're making their rides much more comfortable, almost Lexus-like. And then at the other end of the spectrum, Lexus is trying to get with better handling, with F-Sport packages, V8s. So they're trying to become a little bit more sports car oriented or a little bit more Porsche-like. So in terms of manufacturers building these cars, I guess everyone's trying to stay out of the extremes and go towards the middle. Now to the fun part, why I like this car so much. That's easy. Lots of things to love about this car. First, we'll start with the interior. This console is simulated from the Cayennes and the Panameras that were redesigned just a couple years ago. Our previous edition, which was the first generation Macan, all the controls on the center console were push button. Here, some of the controls are push button, but some of the other controls, you have to go through the menu system. For me, I prefer the buttons on the center console. I like to be able to have easy access to every feature I want just at a push button. I don't like going through the menu system so much. I still can't even program the radio. That's Chris's job. He programs my radio stations for me. These seats are very comfortable. These are 14-way seats. Standard seats are only 4-way, which are okay, but I like to be able to make some more minor adjustments. So at least get the 14-way seats. That's usually part of an option package. Now you can also step up to the 18-way seats, and those are sports seats. They are a little bit firmer and have a little bit more adjustments, so it's a preference up to you. Getting to the back seat, there's much more room compared to our old Macan. I actually have leg space here, pretty comfortable. The seat is where I will be driving, and someone who's relatively tall, like I am, has plenty of leg space and room around in the back seat. I know in our older Macan, this area would be much more tighter and my legs would be much more closer to this seat, and there's definitely much more comfort. As an upscale hoarder, this is my happy space. I got space for all my stuff. Chris and I always have a lot of baggage, so here it all goes. We can actually increase the baggage space if we put these two seats down. Granted, this is not the biggest trunk, but for the classification of this vehicle, the trunk is a decent amount of space. If you need more space, well, you gotta get a bigger vehicle. I have a great spouse. He usually doesn't put too many demands on me, but when it comes time to cars, he does have certain features that he says is a must-have. First of all, it must have cooling seats. So let's check here. Yep, I see blue dots. There's a little seat with a little fan symbol, and there's 3 little blue dots. That means his seat would be cooling on maximum. Yay! It's a go. I can keep this car now. For the seats, if you go with leather, you have the option to add ventilated front seats. So if you pick the cloth seats, which is supposedly, they call it Alcatraz, I don't know. To me, it's like vinyl or nylon. Supposed to be like grippy, so when you're driving aggressively, it'll keep you in your place. I guess if you live in cold parts of the country, like Alaska, you don't really need cooling seats. So unfortunately, when you go for the cloth seats, you cannot get the ventilated seats. So if you want ventilated seats, go with the leather option. Leather is always good. So other buttons here, we got the Sport button. There is an option for Sport Plus, but this car did not come with it. So at least we have a Sport button. Sport button allows you to drive a little bit more aggressive. Engine is a little bit more perkier. Handling firms up. So if you want sportier driving, then you can hit the Sport button. Otherwise, you just leave the Sport button off and it goes back to standard driving. I always test drive a Porsche now because I say I have to be happy with it in the regular mode without pushing the Sport button. Because what I don't like is you push the Sport button and then you turn off the car and you leave, you come back in again, it will not remember that Sport button setting. So each time you get into the car, if you want Sport, you gotta keep pushing the button. And to me, that's tedious. I got other things on my mind. I can't always remember to push the Sport button. I test drove this car and it passed the test. There have been times where I test drove a Porsche and was a little bit too lethargic, a little bit too lazy, a little bit too tired. Just like me, I already got enough of lazy and tired of me. I don't need my car to be that way either. So you know the description, poking the bear or waking up the beast? Well, the engine is a beast and it's a big bear. So what that means is there's a lot of power, but you gotta know how to wake it up. What happens with the gas pedal is it drives a little differently than, say, your average car. If you want a little bit of gas, if you're creeping along in traffic, well, this can do that. Just take your foot off the brake, it'll start to creep forward, and then give it a little gas, it'll give it a little nudge, and you can keep up with traffic just fine. However, on your average daily driving, you gotta modulate the throttle a little bit. In order to drive normally, you gotta push the pedal to the middle. That's the middle, not to the floor. You wanna keep the moderate, build up the speed, keep your foot midway down the gas pedal. If you press a pedal down to the metal, which means you press the pedal all the way down to the floor, the engines will spool up, but then at the same time, this engine behaves a little differently because it'll spool up and then try and find the right gear. And actually, the car takes a little bit of time to actually get going. So if you actually want more instant response, you gotta hit the pedal to the middle first before you hit it to the all the way down. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but that's how this Macan works, and that's also how our older Macan drives as well. In the beginning, Porsche SUVs and cars rode very firmly. So over the years, they've gotten more compliant, which means it's gotten more softer and more comfortable feeling. Fortunately, I can adjust the suspension in this Macan. Right now I have it on the firmest setting, which is 2 red dots. You can push the button again and no red dots. That means it's the softest setting. And that's a little bit too soft. If I want soft ride, I just go back to my Lexus. I push it on 1 and it firms it up a little bit, but under highway driving, high-speed driving, and then it still seems a little bit too floaty or a little too soft. So since I have the chance to have multiple cars, I'd rather have this car be its sporty personality. So I go with the 2-button push. And I just leave it there. Fortunately, it remembers the setting, so I don't have to keep pushing it each time I get in this car. So let's talk about the parking assist. So parking assist is very helpful when you're trying to park and you're starting to get too close to an object, like being another car, or God forbid, another pedestrian who you can't see but happens to be there in your blind spot. So that warning system is very handy to have. It's almost a necessity now, as well as having the cameras. But Porsche Parking Assist is a little quirky. The earlier models would have a little bit more erroneous signal, which means that it would sometimes just go off on its own. I don't know why. I could be stopped at a traffic light next to some cars, and all of a sudden the parking sensor would start going off like as if I had hit a tree or hit another car or hit somebody, and it was just beeping like crazy. But there was nothing. I didn't touch anything with the car. It was an erroneous signal. It would last like 1 or 2 seconds. So you have to be aware of that. A lot of new Porsche drivers don't know about that, and there was one incident in New York where we were walking on the street and someone in a Panamera must have just acquired it at the time. And there's so many New York people walking around, crossing the street, they're near the cars. But we were looking over, it must have been a drunk driver. He was yelling at the crowd. The crowd was nowhere near his car, but the sensor had just gone off. So it's some kind of quirky malfunction. So I would just say it's sort of like a German gremlin. Another great feature I love about this Macan, it comes with the panoramic sunroof. I've always wanted a convertible, but you know, life is complicated. When you have a convertible, you need the right climate, you need the right temperature, and you need a lack of bugs. So Florida, even though you got the hot weather, it's humid, buggy, or rainy. And we get tropical storms where other people will probably call them hurricanes, and it's just like no big deal, but it means thunderstorms, showers, rain. So it rains on your convertible days. So here, we get a great big open sunroof. It's not the same as convertible, but at least when the weather's right, let some fresh air come in. Right now, the sunscreen is in place, and it blocks out a lot of the light from the panoramic roof. During the day, if you have 90 degree, 100 degree weather, and the sun is beating on your head, you want to keep it closed so you don't get a sunburn on the top of your scalp. But at night, say it's a full moon, so you just slide the screen back, push it once, it retracts back, and let's say it's still too hot and muggy, too humid, too buggy for it to actually open the sunroof, but you want to let the moonlight in. For all those night owls or werewolves, you need the moon's energy to like regenerate. There you go. So I've had this vehicle for about 2 months now, and it originally had about, I think about 30 miles. So in 2 months, I put a lot of miles on it. I hit 110 today. So that means I've driven about, let me see, 80 miles in 2 months. I'm planning on keeping this car aside until I decide what location I'm going to put this in. So after 2 months, I had a chance to drive this again, put on the few miles, and notice again, since 2 months ago, that the steering alignment seems a little bit off. I decided to take it back to the dealership. I'm gonna have them do an alignment check. I know that the steering wheel is off center a little bit. It's like plopped to the left a little bit. So that means when you're trying to go straight, it's like a little bit that way. And that really bothers me because Porsche means racing. I want everything to be perfect. So the reason why I like these Porsche SUVs, especially this Macan or the Cayenne, is because, first of all, for practical living purpose, weather is always an issue, especially in the Northeast. We're talking about Philadelphia snowy winters, cold, pothole. They have ice storms. Now they're getting hurricane and now tornadoes. Chris and I are always bringing our baggage around with us all the time. We just need room for our stuff. Even when we go to a grocery store, we're bringing coolers and bags and everything. So we need more space. I'm just more comfortable with driving an SUV, and it's great for rush hour traffic. You can see much better. So from all intensive practical purpose, this suits me perfectly, as will for most drivers. These Porsche cars have gotten so reliable. All you need is an annual oil change and the maintenance service according to schedule from the Porsche manufacturer. Now be advised, did you ever wonder why after a few years you see so many Porsches on the used car market? I'll tell you what the reason is. 30,000 mile service, that's a biggie. That service is a major overhaul. Not only is it an oil change, they replace a lot of parts, a lot of the fluids, and it costs money. We're talking somewhere between $2,500 to $4,000. You gotta account for that in your budget. Now, driving Porsches on a daily basis has gotten so good, you can do it. But, like as I mentioned before, if you put a lot of miles, your tires are gonna wear out faster because, first of all, these are performance tires. And each tire, not only is it expensive, it doesn't last very long. So do not expect 30, 40, 50,000 miles on this set of tires. You're lucky if you're going to be able to get somewhere between 10 and 20. On average, any of these Porsche tires all season, I get somewhere between 15 and 18,000. Would I drive this every day? It depends. If you're looking for an everyday car and you're worrying about reliability, commuting, this car could satisfy your needs. But if you tend to drive a lot of miles, like say 10,000 miles a year or more, I would not recommend it. People often ask me, why do I like Porsches? It's because of the whole package. It has the handling, the power, and it just drives right.